Hello guys, today I will show you an updated version of my Fire Staff Blunderbuss builds which I use for Arena, Open World, OPR and of course Wars. There are small differences between the two builds that I'm going for, but I will go over them in the video. Before we start, I have to mention that due to the recent changes in the patches and of course the differences in many of the perks and items, those builds were affected, and not only them but any other build in the game as well. Therefore, for every light build that I'm using, I'm going now with the tuned pants. I believe that this is the strongest artifact for any light user due to the fact that you get so many attribute points you would not be able to compare with anything else. But without further ado, let's just start with the Fire Staff Blunderbuss build and I'm gonna show you what I'm using. For the skill tree of my Fire Staff, I'm going with the regular combination of Pillar of Fire, Fireball and Burnout. I believe that this is the best solution for me when I want to chase targets and to kill them, and of course I need the left side passives for the Pillar, which will give me more damage, more mana, and of course no mana consumption on heavy attacks, more cooldown on heavy attacks, 5% in power when I'm over 50% mana, then of course light and heavy attacks to apply burn, and 5% more damage if I was not attacked in the last 3 seconds. On the left side here we have 10% critical chance and then of course 15% critical damage. I of course go for Rune of Helios as this is an insane amount of empower which you can get every 30 seconds, and of course the Fireball with only the first passive of it, so I can reach on the right side more points. For the right side I'm going with Pyromania as this will give me 10% increased damage to targets with Burn and Smolder. Then I'm going with Heat Up, which will apply a Smolder stack to any melee enemy that will be trying to hit me and I will avoid his attack. And then of course we go with Burnout with both of the passives, and of course last but not least Watch It Burn as it will apply a Smolder stack on every critical hit that we do. Then if we go on the Blunderbuss side, it's a little bit different from what I made in the beginning of the season. But like I mentioned, this was due to the fact that a lot of things have changed and of course different perks are shining more than others right now. So if you see on the right side, I'm going now with Splitting Grenades instead of Claw Shot. So on the Splitting Grenade side we want to have all the Splitting Grenades passives alongside with the other passives that are on the tree, just with the exception of Extended Chamber. This is due to the fact that we want to reach the Double Down passive, which will reduce our next abilities cooldown by 50% once every 30 seconds. Of course, one thing to mention here is that the cooldown will be reduced from the base cooldown of the ability. This means that, for example, if I use a net shot, which currently is sitting at 16 seconds, I would not have it on 8 seconds cooldown, but instead it will be lower down to 4 seconds. And just to prove you that, I will just show you net shot and it's go down to 4, 3, 2, 1 seconds and ready again. This makes the Blunderbuss right side super powerful. As you know, net shot and grenades are insanely strong abilities. On the left side I'm going with net shot with both of its passives just to extend the slow, and then of course Azothrapnel Blast with all of the passives just to increase the damage output. One common misconception, guys, on the left side of the Blunderbuss tree, and I see it to a lot of other builds, is that people are going for ramp and for run and gun. Those two passives are not that good just due to the fact that they don't apply whenever you use the fast reload. And what is a fast reload? If you go and shoot 2 of your bullets from the Blunderbuss, change to your Fire Staff and use a heavy attack, then you would be able to go back to your Blunderbuss and you would already have your 2 bullets in the chamber. If you want to receive those 2 passives of run and gun and ramp, you have to stay on your Blunderbuss for the full animation of the reload, and this will cause you to lose more damage over time as you would not be able to hit in this time frame. Before going further guys, I want to take a second just to ask you to follow and subscribe to the channel so you can give me your support and I can do more of the content that you like. As you can see, most of the people that are watching the videos are not subscribed to the channel, and it would not cost you anything just to click the subscribe button. Thank you very much, and let's keep on going. As we already covered the skill trees, now let's take a closer look to the attributes which I'm using for both builds, and of course why the attuned leather pants are the best artifact for any light user. If we go over the attributes, you can see still my attributes that I used yesterday in the war in which I was playing the anti-heal build. Of course, they are still not perfect as I'm losing 6 ability points in dexterity, and I'm also not using the highest tier of food since I have way too many from the previous patch. If we consider those 6 dexterity points alongside with the 8 extra points from the best food, we would have 14 extra points which we will be able to slot in intelligence. This will give us a total of 50 strength, 25 dex and then 482 intelligence with 25 focus and 100 con. Of course, as I said, this is due to the fact that I played anti-heal build, which is mainly related to using the Fire Staff and of course the Plague from your Blunderbuss just to apply anti-heal effects and dots to the enemies which are clumping on the point. Switching to my alt account so I can show you the other perspective on the other build that I'm using with Fire Staff Blunderbuss. And this is of course the one build that I'm using for arenas and smaller scale PvP or even 1v1s if you want to duel someone. I'm going here with 100 strength, 25 dexterity, 25 focus. This time we are going for 150 con due to the fact that it will give us the 10% critical damage mitigation and due to the fact that we're gonna use the blunderbuss more often in closer combat. Everything else that is left you can just drop it in intelligence as you would benefit both on your Fire Staff and Blunderbuss. Take a note that here I'm not having the most optimal gear and therefore I'm losing quite a lot of attribute points as well. The last thing that we have to cover is what are the perks and items that we are using for both different builds. I'm gonna start off with first the build that I'm using for smaller scale and of course 1v1s, and this is the Fire Blunder with not the Pestilence but the Deep River Blunderbuss. You can obtain this Blunderbuss from any named mob or elite chest in the Sirens elite area and you would receive it with enchanted and keenly empowered perks. Then for a third perk you can choose what you want to slot, but I personally prefer to use a flame attunement. For a Fire Staff there are two really good options. I managed to buy a cheap one with Empowering Fireball, Flame Attunement and Enchanted, and of course you can go for even better one if you replace Enchanted with Alacritus Punishment. Then if we go over to the clothes, as I said, the best artifact to go with is Attuned Leather Pants. In my opinion, this is the best artifact for any light build due to the fact that you receive way more attribute points than any other artifact combination. Of course, everything else is still good and usable, but you cannot get any attribute points as extra, while you can get Empower, healing effects or any other bonuses by placing something else. For headpiece, I'm using Health Refreshing Pillar and Elemental Aversion, as I definitely need the health and the refreshing of the Pillar of Fire. For chest piece, I'm going with Health, Enchanted Ward and Trust Conditioning, and then for a glove I use Health, Net Shot and Refreshing. I'm using 4 refreshings in total, so this means that I would have to spare 2 of them in my armors. I would go over the Attuned Leather Pants and just note that for a last perk I'm using Health due to the fact that Refreshing and Elemental Aversion are already slotted there. And of course for boots I'm going again with full defensive style with Health, Trust Condition and Enchanted Ward. You can go with even fire harnessing on your gear, but I've noticed that it's more worth it to go for defensive perks over fire harnessing, and this is one of the biggest changes that I did to my builds in general. If we go over to the jewelries, I still prefer to play with the Tango Vine amulet, which is dropped with health and trust protection, and for last perk I'm always choosing Shirking Empower. Many people consider stamina recovery to be the best amulet perk, but in my personal opinion and experience, I prefer Shirking Empower due to the fact that I can maintain almost at all times 16% of Empower. This is also the reason why I'm not necessarily in need to use the fire harnessing on my gear, and then of course I can use more defensive perks. For a ring and this build, which we will be mainly using the Blunderbuss, you would definitely need fire damage over the regular one which I use for my critical build. So here I'm going with fire damage, refreshing and hearty. This ring drops from Starstone mutation, so if you have the time and the rotation is there for you, you can go and try to farm it. It would always drop with fire damage and refreshing, so you are basically trying to get hearty as last perk. Last but not least, depending on the content, you can go with any earring. If you have Endless Thirst, is the best possible option, but unfortunately since this is my out account, I cannot have it 2 times yet. That's why I'm using the Champion's Earring, which will provide me with the 4th refreshing toast, and of course regenerating. If you are playing in arenas or OPRs, a good perk to have as well could be Purifying Toast, but it's up to you to decide. For the Heart Rune on my out, I'm using a Bio Bomb, but of course a better solution for that could be also Vines. Unfortunately, I don't have Vines upgraded on my account here, so therefore I'm not running it. Definitely I will make an update on Season 4, since the cost of the runes upgrades will be dropped really low, and therefore it would be way easier to upgrade them. And jumping back into my main account, where we're gonna go over the different build that I'm using for anti-healing effects, mainly in wars. Of course in OPRs it's also reasonable to be used, but it's not that great of a build to be used in a small scale or a 1v1 scenario. Here I have a completely different items, and of course I'm going for different perks as they have different priorities. As you can see already, I have the Fireball on my gear due to the fact that I want the maximum damage potential from my Fire Staff, and of course the criticals that I'm relying heavily on. I go with Health, Empowering Fireball, Enchanted Ward. Then we have again Health, Trust Condition and Enchanted Ward for a chest piece. We have Health, Refreshing Pillar, Enchanted Ward. Again the same, Attuned Leather Pants, the best artifact for light, with Health as last perk. And then last but not least, Health, Refreshing, Enchanted Ward on the boots. For a weapon, I'm going with Keen, Alacritus Punishment and Keenly Empowered. As you may know, I run Keen on the weapon due to the fact that I believe that the Keen build for the Fire Staff is the best. It mainly relies on criticals, and of course this can keep your mana on high levels at all times. Therefore I run Keen, Alacritus Punishment, Keenly Empowered. For the Blunderbuss here, the difference is that I'm using the Pestilence. The Pestilence, as you know, gives the bonus of anti-heal effects on every target hit, even if it's not hit by the Pestilence itself, but with your other weapon. Therefore, the Fire Staff does the job and the Blunderbuss is just there to support. I placed Plague Splitting Grenades as last perk on the weapon due to the fact that I'm not using it for damage or any other shenanigans, but one thing to note here is that if you place Splitting Grenades on your weapon, you have to wait for the explosion and then to change to Fire Staff. If you change your weapons before the explosion, even if you damage the enemies, they would not receive the disease effect, and this would basically mean that your perk is not active at all. For amulet, I'm using again the Tango Vine amulet, as I use also on my out, and this is giving me the health, shirking empower and trust protection. And then for the ring, there is the small change here due to the fact that I'm relying heavily on keen and many criticals. I'm playing with hearty, keen and refreshing instead of hearty, fire damage and refreshing. I have the Endless Thirst earring, which I would be using on my out if I could duplicate it, but unfortunately I cannot. So this, in my opinion, is the best earring to be used for a mage. And of course, as last perk, I placed Refreshing, so I can complete the 4 perks of Refreshing. Biobomb is the rune that I'm going for. In my opinion, that's the best rune in this season, and that's why I'm choosing it. And since I didn't really go over the skill trees of the Fire Staff, whenever I'm using the anti-heal build, I will go really quickly over them so you can see what I'm picking and what I'm using when I'm playing this build. So I will be playing with Pillar of Fire, Meteor Shower, and of course Fireball. Those are your 3 AoE abilities that will provide a lot of damage on the clumps and mainly the points. As I said, this build is mainly used for wars and OPRs, so the amount of players that are clumping and fighting each other are quite a lot. We go for Pillar of Fire with again both passives for extra damage and mana. Again, the 2 passives on top for the heavy attacks, giving you more cooldowns and of course not costing any mana. Then we go on the right side for more Empower when your mana is over 50%. Then of course light and heavy attacks to keep up the smolder stacks going, more damage, critical damage. And then of course the small change here is that we go all the way with the passives with Fireball, due to the fact that on direct hit Fireball will give you not only 10% of your mana back, but it will also reduce the cooldowns of your abilities by 7%, which is technically meaning more abilities, more damage, more anti-heal effects. On the right side we go for 1 extra passive, and this is Kindle, just so we can keep the smolder stacks for a little bit longer. In general, this passive gives you 1 more second of smolder, which is not that much, but still enough. And then if we look at the Meteor Shower, we just take the ability itself. You can also go for the first 2 perks that are giving you a little bit of mana regeneration, and Smolder if you hit a target under the Meteor Shower, but I don't think those 2 passives will be more worth it and being replaced by anything else on both sides of the tree. And with that, guys, I think it's safe to say that we covered the both builds for the Fire Staff and Blunderbuss, which I'm using in PvP, both for small and bigger scale in wars, OPRs, arenas and open world PvP. Before any of you going and saying that there is no enough gameplay in the video, please make sure to check the channel, as there is plenty of gameplay with both of the builds. And if that's not enough, you can also follow me on Kick, where I'm streaming 5 days a week, and we're gonna be able to show the gameplay and what the builds are capable of. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. Please make sure that you subscribe if you like the content, and of course I will see you on the next one.